Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today's tutorial is going to be focused on a server banner that you post in any sort of channel. And this specific tutorial is going to be a whole lot of fun. Fun being used in the sense that you're going to have to micromanage a lot of different layers to make sure you stay organized. Otherwise, it's going to be a massive mess. Because as you can see here, there are a lot of layers. Now, I didn't do the best job here in managing them and making sure that they're organized in a way that's easy for me to return to, just because this is a mock-up I did pre-video, just to make sure I got the design down how I wanted it to look. But once we get into the tutorial itself, I'm going to show you what's the best way to manage this and keep it organized. Though of course, if you have your own method, then whichever you feel will suit you best. So without further delay, let's get into the tutorial. We're going to start off by creating a new file. So file, new, and we're going to want 750 for our width and 350 for our height. Then click create. As always, create new layer down here and delete the background layer. With the background out of the way, we can go ahead and make our initial shape. Now the color we're going to be using for the base of the shape is going to be the following: 4935555. If that's a bit too small for you to read it, then okay. We're going to go over to rounded rectangle, though again it doesn't really matter because either one of these allows you to curve the edges with properties. So I'm going to choose rounded rectangle. I'm just going to drag a random shape, and then I'm going to go over to properties on the right. Now if you cannot see the properties window, you're going to have to come over to window, go over to properties, and then click and make sure it's checked. Then it's going to pop up on the side right here, and from there you can drag it over to the right, or you can leave it in this little pop-up section over here. I prefer having on the right side because I use it so often that I like to have it docked right on the very far right side of my screen. I cannot English today. Alright, so let's go ahead and curve the edges, make that 20 pixels. We do not want a stroke. We want to use the color that we just picked out. For the width, we're going to go 555. And for our height, we're going to choose 160. From here, we're going to go ahead and do Control G, and we'll call this the main area. Right click on the eyeball, and let's make this red, just to create the initial steps of organization. We'll call this the base, and we're going to make sure that it is centered, just so we have a nice area to work with. Now as you can see, the total canvas size is much larger than the actual banner size, and the reason I do that is just so I have extra wiggle room if I want to add extra shapes on the outside or enlarge. And I'll show you at the ends how to actually save even when you have extra space in the sides, because if you just save like this, the image is going to appear smaller than you intended it to be. Alright, now we can go ahead and create a new layer. Clip that layer, go over to your regular rectangle tool, swap your color to the following: 825D93, click OK, and then hold shift as you create this square, just so all the sides are equal. There we go, and it's okay if it's a little larger than we need it to be, because it's going to be clipped and you're not going to see it outside of the frame. As you can see, it stops right there. Now we're going to make the interior that color we just picked out. There we go. We're going to turn off the stroke, and then we're going to do Control T, hold shift as we turn it so it turns at 15-degree angles. We're going to move this to around here, click OK, right click, rasterize layer, choose this right here, which is add layer mask. We're going to come over to our gradient tool, hold shift, and come down like so. And we're just going to be adding a gradient to this shape, just so it appears as if there's a small fade to a different color on this right side here. And now we're going to go ahead and drop the opacity on it, just so it blends a bit better. I'm going to go with 80%, but anything between 70 and 90 will probably look good. We can go ahead and rename this as the right corner gradients, and making sure each of your layers is named in files of this size, or not even large files, files that have lots of things clipping onto one another. If you don't name it, if you don't color code it, it can get really messy really quickly, and going back and editing it, or even going back and making small changes, will become much more difficult and time consuming. With that gradient corner out of the way, we can go ahead and come over to this left side and make some progress on that. So go to your color and swap it to the following: C5, A7, E0. Click OK. Create a new layer. Come over to your rectangle tool. Make sure the fill is that new color we just picked out. Turn off the stroke and hold Shift as you draw it. Now it doesn't matter if this one is too big, because once again we are going to adjust it like so. Let's put ours at 45 degrees. I'm happy with that. We can move it to say here. Now I'm holding Shift as I move this using the move tool, so it moves horizontally, because if I don't hold Shift it moves just like that, and it can be pretty annoying when the shape doesn't move like you want it to. So I'm going to adjust it a bit until it's a little past center, just like so. And we can always come back and adjust it in the future if we're not happy with how this looks. Now we're going to do Control J, clip that as well. We're going to move this below, make sure it lines up like that. I'm going to use my arrow keys to get it a bit closer, even a tad closer. Alright, I'm happy with that. And what I just did is I was on the move tool, and then I clicked left arrow key and up arrow key to make some adjustments to this on a very small scale. Let's go ahead and name this the left giant square, and then we'll call this left giant square top. Square top. And we'll call this the left giant square bottom. And for these, I'm going to make them orange. Any of the squares that I make on the left side that are on top of this, or these themselves, I'm going to make them orange, just so I know what they are from a quick glance. Now come back to the left giant square top, Control J, move that up. Clip, you can either do right click, create clipping mask, or you can hold Alt right in between and click, just like that. Now for this one, we're going to swap the color of it and make it a bit darker. Now the color for this is going to be the following: B797D5. So we're going to come over here and we'll make it that. And we're going to adjust it so it's about there. That's the first one. We'll call this the left giant square top. We'll do the same thing for the bottom. Move this up, clip, clip. And we'll call this giant overlay bottom. We'll swap the color of that as well. And we shall move it down. From here, we're going to make a small diversion and come back to this right section. Alright, so create a new layer, clip that layer on, drag and create a square, and for the width, we're going to want about 110 pixels, and the same for the height. As for the color, we're going to be using the following: FBD8FA. Click OK. Then do Control T, hold Shift as you rotate it, click the check mark, and then adjust the shape until it is in about this location. and then a little bit more. There we go, and we'll call this the right small pink square. And for the color, we'll make it yellow, just so we know it's different from this whole thing going on the left side. Now we're going to return back to the left by creating a new layer. Let's make this orange. We're going to go over to our rectangle tool. We're going to disable the fill, enable the stroke, make sure the stroke is white, have it at 2 with the dotted line stroke option. And once that is done, hold shift as you create the square and then rotate it to a 45-degree angle and then adjust it until you feel it's in a position that works well with your text and whatever other additions you might have made. So I'm going to adjust that till it's about here for one, then Control J, clip that, and I'll put another one right down here. And I'll call this dotted square right, and this one dotted square left. And these, I said orange, but since they're a tad different, let's go ahead and make these green, just so they're quicker to find. Now we're going to make a few more adjustments to each of the corners. So create a new layer, make sure that is clipped, and it is. We're going to be using the following color, FBD8F9, and you'll notice that's the same exact color that we used for this square on the right side. So click OK, and then drag it out. Doesn't matter what the size is because we're going to be rotating it in just a moment. Make sure stroke is disabled. Come over to the move tool, do Control T, and hold shift as you rotate it, and then drop it in the corner. And we'll call this the left corner overlay. That works. The next step would be to please subscribe to the channel and like the video so as to appease the unforgiving YouTube algorithm overlord. After that very important step, we're going to create a new layer. We're going to make sure we're using straight white, 5Fs, go over to our rectangle tool, disable the stroke, enable the fill, and create a straight line that is about that for the width. Now I actually will increase that a tad, it's a bit too small. There we go, and do Control T, put that at a 45-degree angle, and move that to the corner. And we're going to do the same thing for this corner right here. We'll call this the left corner line. And since it's on the left side, we'll go ahead and make this green. Control J, make sure that is clipped. Move this to the right side. And we'll call this the right corner line. And because it's on the right side, we'll go ahead and make this yellow. This I'll go ahead and drag down so the yellows can be together. Now we're going to come back to, let's say over here, we can make this blue, and we're going to go over to our text layer. Make sure you're using impact fonts. That should come default with every computer, so you should already have it. And I'm just going to put Suke down because that's the name of my community, but you can put down whatever you want, really whatever fits well for you. So I'm going to write TSUKEI, increase the size to a excessive amount. Let's see how that lines up. Not quite. There we go. Hit OK. Let's put this at a soft light, opacity 15%. Hit OK. Right click, rasterize type, and we're going to hold Control and click right where this darker square is at. And now you can see that this whole square is highlighted. So come over to this rectangular marquee tool, right click, select inverse, and click delete. And any text outside of this area has been deleted. Now normally I would have you clip that onto the shape rather than have you delete stuff, but since that layer is already clipped and this layer is already clipped and they're all clipping onto the base, that isn't quite going to work. So we had to use a different method to get the same effect. Now we're going to do something similar for this pink shape and give this a blue color. And we can probably, no, I'll leave it there. Let's see, small pink square. Let's create a new layer. Let's clip that. And I believe I want to use black this time. Let's see how that looks. We'll do TSUKEI once again. We're going to put it at soft lights. Opacity at about 35. And we will adjust it until we are happy with how it looks. I'll put the K and the E in frame for this. Right click, rasterize type, let's make this blue, and this time we're going to click on the pink, and you can see the whole pink square is highlighted. Come over to the rectangular marquee tool, right click, select inverse, and then once again delete. Now we can deselect all of that, and we are just about done. Now we're going to go ahead and drop in our texture layer, and we're going to be using noise for that. So switch the noise to soft light and bring it down to 8%. You can bring it higher or lower depending on how you want it to look overall. And I'm quite happy with how it turns out here. We could adjust the size to make the effect even smaller, but I think this fits perfectly fine. And we'll call this the noise. And now you can give yourself a nice pat on the back because we are finally done with the main area. Actually, let me adjust that real quick. There we go. Now we're done with the main area. So we can go ahead and hide all of this. And before I do that, as you can see, it's all named, it's all color coded. So if I ever come back in the future, I can see exactly where stuff is at a quick glance, and it's not a big disorganized mess. Let's go ahead and hide the main area. I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll call this the icon. This is where we're going to place the icon we're going to be using for this right corner. Let's go ahead and make that orange. In this case, I'm going to use the Discord logo. Control T, adjust that down until it fits. That looks fine to me. Let's make sure it is centered. Right click, blending options, color overlay, and we're just going to be using the pink. Rasterize layer style, delete the extra layer, and we'll call this the base. And I might adjust that down a tad so it's a little smaller. I feel my voice is going hoarse. It's kind of weird, I don't do much talking today. Anyway, icon is done. We can move on to our text layer. And after our text, we're just going to make those little white squares that you saw floating around, and then we're completely done. So text, let's make this green. We're going to be using Tokyo for this one. If you've seen any of the other videos in the channel, you'll know that Tokyo is used the most out of any other font that I have or that even exists. Let's see, we'll use the most for the channel, not use the most in the world. It's probably Times New Roman with all the essays you have to write in school. Anyway, we're going to adjust the spacing between the words a tad for this one. I think that's okay. Make sure this is centered as well. Perfect. Make sure this is white. Okay. And then we're going to be going into blending options, outer glow, and we're going to apply the following settings. 75, 0, make sure it's white, 2, 4, and all of this is pretty standard. Click OK, hide that, and then our text layer is done. And then for the final step, we're going to be creating a new layer, Control G, and we'll call this miscellaneous decorations. Let's go ahead and make this blue. We'll come over to the rectangle tool, make it white, and we will drop down a little rectangle. Right click, blending options, come over into outer glow, 75, 0, 2, and then 8. Click OK, and then let's scale it up a tad, and I'm going to rotate it until this side is aligned with that side, so it'll just be 45 degrees. Hit OK, and then we'll just move it into various spots across the image. It's actually a bit too large now. Let's see how that looks. Still a tad large. Let's use my arrow keys. Okay, that should be alright, so Control J. Let's move this one, let's say over here. Scale it down a tad. I use my arrow keys to adjust. Then Control J. Let's move one over here. Control T to adjust it a tad. Move it up and to the left with my arrow keys. And then one more time, Control J, Control T, and let's make a small one right about here. There. And these we'll do Control G, and we'll call this the halo squares. I do not have creative names for this kind of stuff. Alright, so we can hide that, and this folder is always going to be here if you ever want to come back and make other adjustments. Now to save, we're going to go over to Rectangular Marquee tool, highlight over all of this, edit, copy merged, file, new, create, Control V, delete the backgrounds, and we can do either file, save as, then PNG, or file, export, save for web, PNG 24, and this is just going to be a more compressed version of a PNG file. So that marks the end for the tutorial. I'm going to have another video popping up on screen now, or it might have already popped up, to another tutorial that features a server banner, similarly styled in the sense that it's a little complicated, but it will still look great for any channel you decide to use it for. Thanks for watching, and have an awesome day.